back to the energy debate now. This is what is being discussed in party room and caucus at the moment. Of course, there are two sides of of politics, of course, and the solutions being put forward. The clean energy target is the outstanding policy that has been recommended by the Finkel Review. We've seen a bit of a shift on language there from the government. I spoke to Michael Sukkar about this and the debate around AGL this morning. This is after that meeting with Andy Vassie, and it's very clear that the government does not mind one bit having this very public spat with the AGL boss. Michael Sukkar, thanks so much for your time. What is going on here with this AGL boss? He seems to be saying one thing publicly and another thing privately.
Well, Laura, I've said all along, the interests of AGL and the CEO and their board is very different to our interests as a government. And I suppose what we're seeing is what we're trying to pursue here, which is lower costs, a better energy system, and you've got the AGL board and others who have got their shareholders' interests at heart, and that's where I think the disparity arises.
Well, absolutely right. They're a private company, and the government is seeking to intervene here. It's fairly unprecedented, isn't it?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with us turning the screws on any organisation in a highly regulated market like the electricity industry to get the best deal for consumers. I mean, we've seen that already with the meeting that the Prime Minister and Josh Frydenberg had with all of the energy retailers, and we think that 2 million customers will get a better deal out of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with having that sort of tension. I don't want to speak for why the AGL board and CEO may be saying different things. I think we just want to get an outcome here that's lower costs for consumers.
Now we have a bit of a timeline, a marker, if you like. 90 days, he's going to take it to the board and see what they say. No doubt come back with a plan, which is pretty much what his plan is now for AGL. So what then for the government? Are we going to see a clean energy target in that timeline? Because it's certainty, which is what the industry really needs, and that is seems to be the outstanding thing here.
Well, Laura, we don't want certainty of a bad outcome. I mean, we want certainty and a good outcome, and
would the CET be a bad outcome?
Well, no, we just don't want to rush to failure, I suppose. And so, yes, certainty is something that the sector's called for. Admittedly, a couple of years ago when we renewed the RET at 23.5%, we were told then that that would be the certainty required. Now, I mean, people ask questions, how many subsidies, how many concessions are required? Because at the end of the day, it's consumers who end up paying that. So we are unashamedly on the side of consumers. We're going to fight for them. It's not just the CET, there are 49 other recommendations of the Finkel report. There's Snowy Hydro 2.0, there's the Limited Merits Review. There are so many things that I think that the Energy Minister is sort of attacking this problem from, and that's what you'd expect from the government.
Okay, well, how does the CET marry with what the Nationals passed at their conference at the weekend, which is phasing out subsidies for renewables over 6 years? That seems like something that you might support.
Well, Laura, we have lots of motions moved at both Nationals and Liberal Party state conferences. They are not obviously binding on the parliamentary party. We listen to them, and we, of course...
Okay, on merit, what do you make of that policy?
Well, we've already committed as a government to a 23.5% RET. I mean, this is something we committed to under the former leadership of Prime Minister Abbott. So this is not contested policy. We think in order to get to our carbon reduction targets that we've agreed to in Paris, 26 to 28%, you do need some form of renewable energy target. Now, what the next steps are, that is really what we're talking about now. But where the Labor Party is completely focused on this ideological obsession with, to be honest, taking South Australia national. I mean, what we've seen in South Australia, blackouts, the most expensive prices in the country, that's what Mark Butler and Bill Shorten want to take national. Now, that's what we are stridently trying to avoid, and that's really the political contest here. You've got blackouts on one hand, you've got high electricity prices in South Australia, which the Labor Party want to replicate nationally, and you've got us saying, no, there's got to be a better way, and we're doing the work to do it.
Let me ask you two more questions. First, on the CET, can that go alongside with a coal future? Can both of those things be married together going forward?
Look, that is a question ultimately for Josh Frydenberg, but I'd expect you can. I mean, it's ultimately where you calibrate these sorts of targets. I think we saw in Victoria You know, overnight, 20% of our generation taken out of the system because the state Labor government basically taxed them out of existence. And we've seen.
Why aren't you talking about fracking? Why aren't you talking about fracking? That would be a medium-term or short-term solution, wouldn't it?
Well, Laura, you make a very good point. Unfortunately, it's state governments that control those things. And, you know, you've got state governments who have locked up our gas reserves. I mean, in the case of Victoria, they've locked up not just unconventional, fracking, but conventional gas reserves. And I mean, that's the other part of this picture.
Well, that's one last question I wanted to ask you about this, because the government has moved legislation, so there's no legislative barrier here to quarantining gas for the domestic market. That's not due to come into effect until the 1st of January. The way you're talking is that this is a problem right now that needs to be solved. So why not bring that timeline forward? Why not do it now?
Well, we've already seen, and the Prime Minister spoke in the House yesterday, of the gas price in megajoules, I think, coming down from $12 to $8 following the intervention of the government in the market. Now, again, we are dealing with legacy issues. These are not, it's a bit like the Titanic. It doesn't just turn on a dime. These are decisions that were taken by the Labor government, basically, to sell all of our eastern seaboard gas offshore without any thought to what it would do to domestic energy prices. And we're now seeing that intervention, as I said, from $12 to $8. Yes, there's more to do. I mean, historically, gas prices in Australia have been around the $4 mark. I get your sense of urgency, but as I said, we don't want to rush to failure here. But we are, right now, doing things every single day that puts downward pressure on prices. And we've got this, this Labor Party that's standing in the way of every decision we take because they've got this ideological obsession.
Michael Sukkar, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Laura.
As you can see, a bit of a change in language around the CET today. First from Josh Frydenberg, the Minister in charge, saying that the AEMO report was a bit of a game changer when it comes to that. And also some members of the backbench, and including the outer ministry there with Michael Sukkar, talking about the CET, not in glowing terms, but really hinting that perhaps it needs to be recalibrated to address the issues in that AEMO report, and that is that there is a short-term fix that is needed sooner rather than later. I'm sure that this is being discussed in party room at the moment, and indeed the Labor caucus room as well. Coming up in about 20 minutes.